Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Checked Before. This time, you might have heard me say this before, Deja Q. Yeah, it's like, I feel like I've said this before. Deja Q, yeah. Will I be annoyed with him? You'll find out. Give it a listen. You probably not. You're probably a big Q fan. Speaking of Deja Q, Deja Q. This, you might have heard me say this before. Patreon.com/IBD. Great way to support the show. Great way to support our network. A lot of our great friends elsewhere on the network support us so we can make it all the way to the final season of The Oracle. Patreon.com/IBD. And this is, you know I've got it. Don't try it. You know where you'll end up. And it's all been trekked before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. The regular crew is here.
This is Steven.
And Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. We are here to talk about the episode Deja Q. First impressions.
This is a low bar, but I think it's my favorite Q episode so far. Yeah, I think I liked it overall.
I agree. It's my favorite Q episode, too.
I want to point out that one of my notes was, I will be disappointed if Steven didn't like this one.
I did.
The things that I would expect you not to like about a Q episode were fairly absent here. So
for the most part, yeah. Yeah.
I liked that it started out with an issue with a craggly, ugly moon, and then there was also the problem of that satellite coming down on the planet.
That's right.
Funny story, when I went to a campaign event for Kate Mulgrew's husband when he ran for governor of Ohio a million years ago, he brought John Delancey with him, and like the whole Voyager cast and William Shatner. And John Delancey was talking about that scene and said that he just could not get like the covering to sit right. So right there on the bridge of the Enterprise, he just whipped it right off and actually was fully nude as they filmed that.
Well.
Yeesh. Given what I expected to happen, like the reason why he was there, I put that his entrance is way too cheeky. Now, that wasn't exactly... it was unintentional at first. No, just the grin and everything. Just like the whole... I don't know. Would have preferred some sort of distress, I guess.
Yeah. Distress in what way?
For him to be unhappy about being there at first, instead of
about being demoted and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he was pretty cranky. He just... I don't know.
No, I'm just saying before during the cold open, that was like a misleading thing to do, like intentionally. The whole like I'm here to be playful, But
it was also very Q to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote, "Oh, great, Q," even though I knew he was coming. I was like, "Oh, great, that's all we need."
I mean, the episode was Deja Q. If Q wasn't in it, that would be pretty
kind of
weird.
ridiculous. Yeah,
it could have been about the continuum or something.
I did like the whole. The dilemma at the top with the moon and everything. I mean, I liked it through the whole show too. And this is the only reason I thought maybe Q was behind it. Like, couldn't they have got a little more warning? Like, didn't they see this coming a little sooner that the moon was slipping out of its orbit?
Yeah, I wasn't really clear on that, on what the circumstances were. I mean, obviously the Enterprise crew jumped to the same conclusion you did, that Q was involved somehow.
Yeah, and that's the only thing that makes me think Q was involved, was that if it was that sudden. But it didn't seem like his style.
It could have been the other Q, eventually, or the continuum, testing him on purpose.
Yeah. It could have been.
Could have been.
I don't know. I guess I just took for granted that it was a natural phenomenon. That was a mislead. But you could be right.
The science of it. I mean, I'm not no astronomer or whatever. It's just something seemed a little off about the explanation. They couldn't blow it apart. They're saying that the mass of the moon would stay the same. It would just spread over a different area.
Right.
I feel like smaller pieces over a larger area shouldn't have the same effect as one mass in a smaller focal point.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that was the logic used in the classic film Armageddon. That they had to blow it up before a certain point so the pieces would go different directions. Yeah. Otherwise, it would be just as catastrophic.
Right.
I mean, something the size of a moon coming down on you, even splitting into pieces, I think would still be pretty catastrophic.
Yeah. I'm not saying it would be great. I'm just saying it could still be preferable to...
Well, I think destroying the planet all at once and destroying the planet mostly all at once are still pretty comparable. I mean, I don't think they survived the moon coming down in pieces. I think that's too much.
Well, and when the people on the planet were like, we started evacuating again, I'm like, I feel like that should have happened a little sooner.
But they evacuated the coasts, not the planet.
Right. And I thought...
Well, see, they didn't want to create a panic. Yes. Sorry.
But I thought, and eventually they came around, but early on I thought they seemed very like, why aren't you doing more? You should do more to help us. It's like, well, we're here, but you should have called, if you'd called me a little sooner, say last week, I might have been able to do a little more.
I mean, maybe they did call last week and just stick the Songia Starship out there.
True.
Yeah, they had to drop off medical supplies somewhere.
If you remember our favorite, Conscience of the King, it was going to take a month for Starfleet to get a rescue operation.
That's true. That's true.
To the planet.
Yeah, and I think we get caught up in, well, it shouldn't take them long to go from here to there. But yeah, I actually prefer the idea of, like I'm trying to think if it was the Menagerie or which one, where they're like, we're not going to get an answer from Starfleet for 3 days. I kind of like that concept still being a thing, despite the fact that they have light speed, more faster than light speed travel.
Yeah, in Next Gen DS9, it's not really a thing. Like, they're pretty in constant communication. Yeah. But Voyager, obviously, that'll become an issue again, being so far away from home. Did you buy the Q's initial thing that he said he chose to be a human and Picard is the closest thing he has to a friend, and that's why he's on the Enterprise?
At the time, I didn't really see too much of an issue with it. I mean, I think that's a concept we see a lot in other things. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a lot of my notes are actually about things that this episode reminds me of, whether or not they were pulling from other media intentionally or if other things borrowed from them, whatever. But the idea of there being this powerful villain and their only friend is their arch rival, that kind of thing. I
would have accepted that, but I was glad when there was another reason behind it, that he just needed protected, and he thought Picard was his best shot at being protected.
Yeah, I like that.
Which is correct.
Yeah, he was right.
Sure.
Fashion. Which looked worse, Q naked or that outfit he wore the rest of the episode?
I was going to say who wore it best, Q or Q?
Q. I think Q wore it best.
Which Q?
Corbin Burnson Q.
So in the fandom, he's referred to as Q2.
Okay.
I know that on the screen, obviously, they don't distinguish, but you got to have some way to differentiate them when you talk about them.
Yeah.
So since you bring that up, I had forgotten already that he was going to be in this, especially,
I mean, too.
Since it came so late in the episode. And my first thought, and this is another Steven-related comment, is that it looked a lot like Woosley when he showed up. I was like, wait, what? A lot of the mannerisms he was using, during that scene reminded me of some of Steven's too.
Yeah, I'll take that as a compliment.
I love Corbin Burnson. I love Q2 or Q or whatever you want to call him. Yeah, I enjoyed his performance quite a bit. I don't really have anything else to say about it.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I was happy to see him. I loved everything he did. Even when he poked his head back in.
IMDb does list him as Q2 in the credits for this.
Okay. And I know he was uncredited in the episode, which is also kind of cool.
Correct. But then, Well, I'm pretty sure, I'm looking it up right now, I'm pretty sure Q, Corbin Burnson Q, appears in the second episode of TNG.
Okay.
Because I remember distinctly, nope, this is it. This says it's it. I swear there was one more episode. We'll find out down the line. But yeah, I remember him very well, even though it was brief appearance.
So I had to get this reference out of the way since it was before the cold open. When Picard actually said, make it so, this episode, which delights me now to no end for some reason. I'm trying to keep track of those.
Speaking of Picard, there's a moment where he's rubbing his head.
Yes.
Is that the meme?
That was my next comment. I'm pretty sure that was the facepalm meme.
That's what I thought. There. Yeah. Immediately I'm like, that has to be it. Yeah. I thought that I was very excited about that.
So I looked on Memory Alpha, and this is the only episode he's listed in. So I was wrong that there was a second, even though I swore I remembered him piloting a shuttle. But he was referred to in the 25th anniversary special as Q2. That's what he referred to himself as. And it did say Q2 in the script. So I guess that's where that comes from. Okay. He is in the Peter David novel Q and Law, as well as the novel IQ. So he's featured in the Q Continuum trilogy of novels. So he gets quite a few more appearances on the page, just not on screen.
Well, I mean, how did they call him Q2 in the novels? Or they call him Corbin Birdson or what?
I'm pretty sure they call him Q2. Unless they're just calling him Q, but I'm pretty sure it's Q2. It's been a while since I've read all of those novels I just mentioned. It's just been a while. The Q trilogy, the Q Continuum trilogy is neat because it ties in the God from Star Trek V in the center of the universe as a Q, as well as whatever energy being was at the edge of the universe that made Gary Mitchell and Elizabeth Denner gods was also a Q. And so the trilogy like ties all these characters together as Qs.
I love that. Continuity, just over various types of things, especially like comic books. But is there some sort of official sign-off point where they say this novel is canon or this has become...
I believe no novels are canon. Unfortunately. I mean, there are many novels that are sort of treated as canon until they're contradicted. Imazadi being one of them. And there are certainly novels where some of the Star Trek writers add parts from novels into the show and then they become canon. But no novels are considered canon. The closest is Jerry Taylor's Mosaic. And the reason... Mosaic. It's a Voyager novel. And the reason that is even close is she was the showrunner of Voyager. And it was her Janeway backstory novel. And so whether the novel is considered canon or not, being the showrunner, her ideas of what Janeway's backstory was made it into the show pretty much.
I guess it's like I'm bringing up Star Wars, but a lot of the a lot of the stuff that Star Wars that's no longer canon is making it into the canon stuff, elements of it.
Yeah.
I feel like Star Wars novels were canon forever until they made the new trilogy of movies, and and now I really liked J.J. Abrams before 10 years ago with Lost and everything else, and Alias. But now between doing that to Star Wars, even though I'm not a big Star Wars fan, and the Kelvin Universe Star Trek movies, I kind of feel like J.J. Abrams is awful. Yeah,
as I've said, I don't want him touching any universe I love right now.
That's interesting.
No.
I guess I've never really heard Stephen weigh in about what he thought about the Abrams Star Wars as this last trilogy.
You know what? Let me take that back. He could do one movie of each franchise and then go away.
But he didn't do Star Trek Beyond, so I disagree. And Keith, the correct plural is Stars War.
The less said about episode 9, the better. But this is a Star Trek podcast.
It is. Yeah. So just an offhand comment, I really liked Worf telling Q to die.
I wrote that down too. I loved it.
And then Q asked him if he ate any good books ate any good books.
Yeah. Those both made me laugh. Yeah. So I laughed a lot more at Q this episode, and I loved Worf saying that. I also loved, and I think this might have been right after it, I wrote it down as Q the blank game when they all kept giving him a name. Like Q the Magnificent, and then it was just all the terrible nicknames for him. I thought that was great.
I liked his description of getting sleepy and how terrifying it was. I've never thought of being sleepy as terrifying, but I get it.
This is one of many tie-ins that I have written down here, but since we've gotten to that point, there are a couple of things. First of all, the turbo lift rant reminded me of the Good Place, Michael. You know, that kind of this. I almost prefer this in a way. There was a really methodical kind of description of what it felt like to suddenly become human. Also, from the DC universe, Mitch Spitlick, the idea is very similar to the Q Continuum. He just shows up, does whatever he wants. Right. But in general, the Imps is very similar to the Q Continuum when they do these storylines. And there were at least a couple like this in the animated series and in Supergirl, the episode you're referring to, this idea of them being kicked out or punished by the rest of the Continuum for their behavior, which you would like to think something like that would happen. Or some device to rein them in at some point, some accountability.
I was with you, Keith. I thought that turbolift thing about being human, I thought that was a great description of being human. It reminded me of, this is heavy praise, but the Shakespeare thing about, we're all mere actors on the stage fretting about, all meaning nothing or whatever. The specificity of it, bad breath and all these terrible things about being human and everything. I thought that was, I really like that. And they get more into it later, but I thought it was really good. Whole YouTube supercut of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where they're having these terrible conversations, and then they cut to the other person in the room being there the whole time. It's very similar. because it's just him. And I was like, Worf's still in there, right? And eventually he comes around to it. So I thought that was, not only was what he was saying really cool, and I thought it was very, very much like, yep, I think that's kind of like when we're thinking about how terrible things it is to be human. He was lifting off a lot of those. And then just the visual part of it too. I just thought that was a great moment.
I have one last reference about that, and that is when he was talking about falling asleep and being hungry. It was like the Anne Rice series. One of the novels was The Body Thief, with Lestat changing places with a human being, swapping minds. And there was a few bits where he's describing the feeling of being hungry and having to use the bathroom and so forth, and as being this alien concept because he'd been immortal for so long. So I did I like that tie-in too.
I thought it was a nice touch and very in keeping with the Q character that when they asked for Q's assistance with the moon, he was just like, well, just change the gravity, change the laws of physics.
Yes.
And yeah, you laugh, but I'm like, it would be so simple for a writer doing this episode to forget who Q is and just be like, oh, this is a funny thing about humans. And I love how consistent they stayed with the character throughout what was going on.
Mm-hmm. And also, this yet another detail, just the way that they come at things. And I dare say that this was a good show not tell thing with the way that he would just approach these issues. It wouldn't come to him automatically, not the idea of going, well, this is how I would translate this into human terms, or I can just whip up this device with all my scientific knowledge. He has a lot of knowledge, and I appreciate the concept that could carry over, but there are certain things on a larger scale that he wouldn't have a reason to know how to do because he could have just done them. Mm-hmm. Just like the way he thought about doing it, as if you would say, oh, just fold this piece of paper or something. Yeah.
My next note I wrote down was Dr. Crusher being rude to Q is everything. Like just that whole sequence where she did not care about his physical comfort and had nothing but disdain. I loved it so much. I was surprised when Q ordered the 10 chocolate sundaes that we actually got to see them at the end of this scene. What a great gag.
Yeah. And I thought Q is the kind of jerk who would go into a restaurant and order 10 of those and be like, you know what? I decided I don't want them. And not pay for them, or he'd get 10, not eat them, and then give a small tip.
Yeah.
Oh.
You're touching another part of the gag.
He'd be like,
great.
and in this instance, I'm surprised he would have been like, "What do you want? I've never been human. I don't know how to tip." As if that's an excuse.
Since they're on a starship, he can't really stick somebody with a check either, which would have been the other bit. Like Data, he leaves and Data has to pay for it or something.
Yeah, no, there's no money. Everything's free in 10 forward. So I was going to say,
it's easy to run up to get really drunk.
Yeah, I think
you have to pay for the real alcohol though.
My alternate episode is Troy walks into 10 forward right after that, sees the sundaes, and just goes to town. Like,
yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't. Well, if they're there anyway, I better go ahead and eat them.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, she's wearing her less frumpy line of clothing on the bridge.
I got a Seinfeld reference.
Her more frumpy line of clothing.
Seinfeld reference out of that. The thing with the muffin tops.
Yeah.
The stumps. Newman comes in with a suitcase, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
That could be Troy coming in, essentially with a spoon and like, time to go to work.
I was disappointed Guinan wasn't in this episode more. I'm glad they included her at all.
Her SmackDown was great, but it was much shorter than I thought she was going to be involved.
I mean, she stabbed him, so that alone was worth it.
Yeah.
So worth it.
That was great.
I think that you don't want to give away too much of that too soon if you're in that situation. I like the build up. I like the emphasis of the camera turning. You realize, oh yeah, that history. Want to see some of that play out, and they just give you just enough. You don't want it to be too cathartic. You don't want to lock them into too many commitments as far as canon goes. It's just here's a thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much interaction they have again past this. I don't remember a ton of interaction with Guinan and Q after they established they hate each other, but
it would have been
I could be wrong. She's still Whoopi Goldberg was in I want to say 28 episodes of the series, so she's in quite a bit. John Delancey was only in 8 episodes, so
I did really like the Data Q talk before the Sundays. about being human.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
obviously that runs through the whole episode, but that was another really good conversation. I mean, just obviously they're coming at it from two completely points of view. Matters of perspective.
Yes. I've got so many of those for the next week. Oh my God.
But yeah, I really enjoyed that conversation. I thought, all that human stuff could have been a big cliche. And I think this is where and this is why you guys like Q, and I loved him in this episode, or a lot more than usual. I think without that kind of character, because we've seen those episodes where gods try to be human or humans become gods, and it's a trope that is really interesting, and it was here. And I thought that Data being in there, and that's my alternate episode. It's a Q Data buddy road film. It's them traveling to whatever different planets. Q and Data go to Rigel 7 and run into misadventures, meet girls, women, whatever, meet girls. It's
all the above.
Me, so I'm calling it girls. But yeah, again, I guess I'm overstating it. But yeah, I really like that conversation.
I put something similar. Just I thought the Data and Q thing was a masterful pair up. Mm-hmm. Just it made so much sense in retrospect. It's like why wouldn't I? Would I have thought of that? It's an obvious thing, or I mean, it should be an obvious connection to try to make between the two, and to have those kinds of discussions happen, where you don't have that human dismissiveness in that situation. It stays more at a philosophical point rather than someone just going, no, it's just like this. I
think Q references a Klingon goat. Do you think there is such a thing as a Klingon goat? Or was he just calling Worf a goat who happens to be a Klingon?
I think it's the latter.
Okay.
I don't know. That's a good question.
I think he was using Klingon as an adjective rather than a species or something.
Okay. All right.
Q says he has an IQ of over 2,000. And I wondered if that was true or if he was just making claims, because IQ isn't just how much you know, it's about how well you think, right?
Yeah.
Something like that, I think.
And I feel like if his IQ, I mean, he's definitely intelligent. He's definitely very intelligent. I kind of feel like the way he handled this situation was, I know they made it seem like, he found some humanity at the end, but part of me is like, no, he just knew what game you were playing and
he did the calculations
and solved it. So I don't dispute he's smart. I just feel like over 2,000, really? Is that possible? I'm not sure the way he acts backs that up.
And is that on an Earth IQ scale?
It would have to be.
Couple things about that. Yeah, so I don't know.
He's part of Mensa then, right? He's a member of Mensa.
I mean, he'd be the president.
Yeah.
Well, if he bought into it, he has to probably pay his dues and so forth. But the idea. So first of all, it seems like something that a narcissist would exaggerate about. Yeah. Anyway, so whether or not that's even a real number, who knows? He's probably just saying that for like I'm off the charts.
That's
I mean, I think from what I heard, I think there's like a top value of IQ that it's just you aren't. I mean, you can't really measure past a certain point, or maybe in the future they would have figured out a way to keep quantifying above that because 200 became the standard or something like that, right? The other thing, which I thought was very interesting, which I didn't even consider, Jimmy, you pointed out that maybe he knew that he could, like a calculated risk to just make this sacrifice would get him out of it.
I think so.
I didn't have that impression. It felt genuine to me, like he really didn't know that this was going to do anything. Like you just wanted to end it and get it over with.
I guess you can either believe he's super intelligent and we'll figure that out, or don't believe he's super intelligent. I don't think you can have it both ways. And while I do think Picard sometimes outsmarts him, so I don't think he's an IQ of 2,000. I do think he's pretty intelligent. And I just the way it was easily wrapped up in a day makes me think, he's playing the Q Continuums game.
I don't know. It's interesting though. I
could be wrong. That's just. I guess there's probably no. Only the writer of the episode knows.
I have another point about that. So the idea that he was in a human body would necessarily limit his intelligence to a certain point. I mean, they use the device where I still retain the memory of the things that I learned up to this point. Sure, okay, maybe. I think up to a certain, there's got to be some sort of physical brain limit to how much you can process as a human. Also, having to process emotions suddenly to that extent could theoretically push him over the edge. I mean,
I thought as soon as he got in the shuttle, I wrote down he's going all Commodore Decker, Doomsday Machine.
I've got a few more notes before we get that point.
Sure.
But yeah, I agree with you. I can definitely see that parallel. So where I'm up at the notes is where the energy beings, we figure out that they're coming to punish Q, and he's made many enemies, and we realize why he's actually there. And I'll admit, I was surprised. I didn't see it coming that he had come to them for protection, even though it made so much sense afterwards. Yeah. These people are trying to kill him. This is like against him. And yet he's down in engineering and he's told to watch these levels on this control panel. And he's like not at all paying attention. He's like the worst student in school. I don't know. I just found that like, how selfish is he that even when they're trying to actively help him, he's not going to really do anything back. And I guess that's where I felt that he probably figured this out and outsmarted them. And
no, I still think, all right. So if you're accustomed to being the smartest person in the room all the time, and you're suddenly reduced to this human, for lack of a better word, he can't let go of the habit of needing to be in charge and take control. This task is beneath him from his perspective. So it's a matter of perspective. In other words, no, he would insist on I'm the most qualified, therefore I should be in charge of this, and I'm to watch what you're doing rather than this menial task that you've given me.
It is him staying on brand, like we said. It's him staying in character and being that guy that he is. I don't understand though. I don't get the justification of Picard why they're protecting him. Why would they not give him up?
I think they're pretty close to giving him up when he takes off on his own and removes the choice.
Yeah, yes. I mean, this is the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few right off the bat. It's like, yeah, take him.
Now, see, to me, that's betraying their Starfleet ideals, and that's acting out of character for Picard.
Right.
Even though I think they were going to do it. I think they were just going to hand Q over.
I think that they were. It felt like he was going to keep trying to what extent he could, but Picard seemed to have made peace with the option or with the inevitability that the Q couldn't be saved, and was like, well, I guess you took the choice out of my hands.
I thought it was also very out of character that we're like, we're just going to dump you on a starbase and wash our hands of you. When, again, it's like, now you're endangering other Starfleet officers in another place. It just did not seem in character with the Enterprise crew, no matter what their personal grudges against Q were.
Had they considered the possibility that he was being targeted by that point?
Yes, I believe so. Because he was begging them to save him, and they're like, no, we don't care about you.
Picard, he mentioned relatively early on in the episode, as I recall, that the uncertainty of what was going on meant that they had to keep playing along to a certain point. I mean, Q could have still ended up being the key to solving the puzzle in some way or another. Mm-hmm. You don't discard those kinds of pieces just haphazardly when you have the stakes that large. So
that's a good point.
It could have been a trick. It could have been a game. Could have been a test. So
just to go back to the Calamarians for a second, but isn't it also possible they had a legitimate beef? I mean, we don't know what Q did to them.
Yeah.
Oh, so, sure.
I mean,
yeah.
And I mean, I think some of it falls on them too, which is why they're one of my annoying things for the episode. Like, why not open up a dialogue and be like, this is why we want this guy? And rather than just like shooting all this energy all over and messing up poor data and all that stuff, why not, hey, why don't we talk about this? So some of it's on them too, but I'm trying to remember, and I might be mixing up my godlike creatures, but has Q hurt or killed anyone on the Enterprise?
I don't think so. I mean, he like froze Yar, but I don't think he's killed anyone.
I think I'm thinking of a different god.
The tar guy. the pit.
Yeah. Maybe, I think
the tar guy. Who?
The guy who killed Yar.
Who?
The guy who...
I'm doing the Steven thing.
Yep.
Good callback.
But no, it's a lot of Q's playfulness seems to be posturing after a point. I don't think that it's hard to say what his emotional level was actually, and that's I think that's one of the problems with godlike being and even really Data when you're trying to write consistently for him is the idea of trying to establish their motivations for doing things.
I mean, I guess would Kirk have given up Mud?
Yeah. I think Kirk's much more likely to give up Mud than Picard would give up Q.
Yeah.
Would Mud have ever really been potentially as great an asset as a Q? And would Mud being a human being or humanoid or whatever with obvious emotional and selfish motivations? I mean, He's a common criminal by comparison who has these kinds of common motivations. Why would he be as worth protecting? You know,
I guess it's because I just think they're both nuisances. So.
Well, yeah,
That's fair.
Yeah.
We talked earlier about Data and Q's bond, which was an interesting little bond there, because Q's always treated Data with such disdain, and I think Q got a better understanding of Data in this episode. And Data was the one that saved Q when the energy beings had a hold of him.
Yeah.
And it does feel like Q is ashamed that he would not save Data in his place. And I know this contradicts what I was saying, that he figured out the situation. Yeah. So I guess I'm giving Keith evidence.
Yes.
But the shame Q exhibits feels real. Although, if he's really smart, maybe he just fakes it.
I will say that there's still the possibility there, but the unfolding of it felt too organic to me for him to really go to that point. But
as my dad said, sincerity is the key to life. If you can fake that, you got it made.
First of all, I love the another good place tie-in when Data says, "Not a robot." Essentially, on 10 forward, I loved you could hear the background actors saying, "What's that? I don't know."
I didn't notice that. That's great.
When something was going on, Q in the sick bay, I put that he knows about Data's plot armor. That's why he's not so concerned. He's like, "Oh, he's fine."
Because he's a lead character, nothing can happen to him.
Yeah.
Also, I guess reminded me of Universe Journey when New was created, but they had Crusher playing a pretty big role in Data's repairs. If I don't know how that would translate to biological knowledge, but it in some senses it makes sense that she would have studied how to fix him in the same way that she would in any other alien species, right? But you know, she was there with Data or with Geordi. So, but they were both kind of looking over Data as they were like fiddling with things to try to fix them. So I don't know.
While we're here, I don't know if this counts as fashion, but I'm going fashion. I love the look inside Data's his skull, whatever. Yeah. I thought that looked really cool. The way they had his hair back and everything. I thought that was a really cool effect. You know, it's not an expensive effect, but it looked, whatever. It looked really cool.
Yeah, that
would have been improved from the other attempts they've done to that.
Yeah,
an advance in makeup or effects or whatever.
So Q chooses death by energy being, and as he's running away, they talk about beaming the entire shuttle back.
Yeah.
When did they get that capability, and why do we never see that?
Yeah,
that's that didn't quite register. That's something I really would have liked to ask if there had been some sort of precedent or that, but it felt like, I guess it makes sense, but.
There was a scratching on a record in my head, like the needle across the record. As soon as they said that, I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Maybe they could. You could put forth the excuse that maybe other situations where they were too far out of range or something, or I don't know.
I guess the tractor. Well, yeah, a tractor beam obviously has a longer range transporter beam has a longer range than a tractor beam. But it seems like that would take so much power.
What about the extending the shields? Is that a thing?
Yeah, extending shields is a thing.
I guess
that seemed much more reasonable to me than trying to beam an entire shuttle.
Yeah,
they didn't really give a good representation of how far away the shuttle was from the ship and how fast it was moving. So I don't know about the extending.
I could see a baby shuttle being beamed aboard, like that little shuttle they have.
Maybe. It's kind of like a pod, the 2-seater.
Yeah.
The sports car of shuttles.
Yeah. The mini.
I know we've already kind of talked about Corbin Burnson's performance, how great it was, but the disdain he has for his human body and the way he shows it with the physical humor. I forgot that when we were talking earlier in this episode, but it was, man, what great acting choices he was making.
I did not catch that. I wish I had.
That's the way you come in, you do your minute and a half and you're out. And
he was just like constantly looking at his hands and all of that. It was great.
Came in hot and it was great. And I feel like this is maybe not at the height of LA Law, but LA Law was still a pretty big deal. Early 1990, I feel like.
Was it? I don't.
I think it would have been around that time. I can't remember exactly. It did feel like late 80s.
I feel like it was 87 to 93, maybe.
So, yeah, he would have been, I think, big enough to come in and do like an uncredited cameo. And people were like, oh my God, it's You know.
It was definitely the height of Major League mania, which he was also.
Yes, Major League. I think my biggest Corbin Burnson memory is Psych, which I know is a lot more recent, but
I would say, considerably.
Yeah, but
he was on there. Mine is Seinfeld when he talks to George backstage at the Tonight Show.
He was a lead throughout Psych and has been in the films as well.
That's right.
No, I will say that Psych is certainly my. I did sound like I was scoffing, but certainly that is what he is best known to me for. But yeah, I also wanted to point out that Steven's current hairline is still better than Corbin Burnson's was in this episode. So I didn't want to cast aspersions in that way.
I appreciate that.
Everything else, there was a lot of. I felt like there were a lot of similarities there, like the voice and the mannerisms and so forth.
Yeah. I would have loved to play that part. That's for sure. Yeah. That would have been fun. I could still play that part, by the way,
if it comes up. If there's a Q2 recasting.
Yes.
Maybe for Discovery. For Discovery, there could be.
Hey.
Got to put a petition out or something.
There we go.
Q shrinks the energy beings that are attacking him into his hand.
Yeah.
And I love Q2's disembodied head coming back and exploding him.
I mean,
so good.
And that could be cheesy, but I just think what Corbin Burnson establishes in those 90 seconds before makes it work.
The mariachi band was a nice callback for Q.
Yeah, at first I thought that was going to be racist, but it wasn't. Other than his first...
And he had the mariachi band before, didn't he, in a previous episode?
Oh, you might be right. Yeah.
Well, you said callback. I didn't recall it, but I mean, I guess you both might have...
I could be wrong because maybe I'm just remembering this episode. I know he had it in one of the video games that I played that they actually filmed live action with Q.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Remember there was a video game called Star Trek Borg for your computer that if you beat it, it was like a 2-hour movie, and it was completely filmed live action.
Oh.
And John Delancey was in it as Q.
Wow.
He also hosted the Star Trek Game Show video computer game that as live action, and his assistant was dressed like Janice Rand with the beehive and everything. But it wasn't Grace Lee Whitney. It was a younger woman. I like Q's callback on Riker, too, about when he gives Riker the women. He implies that Riker, before the beard, would have appreciated it more.
I forgot to note that. I love it.
Because Riker in season 1 was different, acted differently towards Q.
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure Q gave Riker 2 hot women just like that in another episode, too. I think he was basically playing his greatest hits at the end of the episode as a reminder of like, yay, I got everything back. And then he gave the women to Worf, which was just weird. Worf did not seem to appreciate it any more than Riker did.
I thought they both did, actually, but maybe it was just me. Maybe I was just appreciating it.
I think the first time Riker did that, or Q did that to Riker smiled at the women, and this time he just seemed more annoyed and impatient.
I wrote Picard's a party pooper for canceling the whole thing.
Well, obviously.
Let's kick back and have some fun.
I mean, the least you could do is let Q throw you a party for taking care of him.
Exactly.
And I think that both Riker and Worf are generally too professional to really let that show on the bridge, at least.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, too. If they weren't on the bridge, then game on.
I think Riker was just more fun before the beard. Now, I like the beard. I like the beard a lot.
It almost does seem like two different characters at times, though.
A little bit. I mean, I believe for one of the films he doesn't have the beard, so we'll get, or at least half a film. So we'll get to see it again, but I'm glad that he's mostly kept the beard. What did you think of Q's present to Data? One of the most famous scenes in Star Trek that's been played a million times.
I had forgotten that that's what was going to happen exactly, or that was a reason for it, and it just...
I forgot it was this episode.
I love the way it was played. The best part of that was just I've stopped, I look over, no, I haven't stopped. Just, it felt so, yeah.
It was great because nobody else laughed. Like, I feel like an original series ending, he'd laugh and then everybody else would take up the laugh, being confused by it. Whereas Next Gen, they're all just like, no, we don't do this.
Yeah. It's like, we don't know what the reference is. We're not in on the joke.
Yeah.
This is a weird thing. We kind of get what might have happened, but what do we do with this? It's perfect, you know.
Did you like Q appearing in the cigar smoke to say goodbye to Picard?
Yeah.
I forgot about that too. It was like you really thought he was gone, and then just...
I liked it. I don't know if it was Picard who said there was some residue of humanity at Q. I thought that was well said.
Oh. Yeah, I wasn't looking at the visual of it, but yes, I remember that part.
Dry clean only.
Yeah.
There was a very old ensign at Wesley's station in the final scene.
Huh.
That guy was much too old to be an ensign, but he had an ensign pip.
Maybe he was adult Wesley again. That was another parting gift. They just didn't pull it out. My last note was that the aliens gave a Wakandan salute to them. So they gave him one of these at the end for the thanks for saving our planet.
Q put the moon back, so that's nice.
That's right. Yeah.
It's a Deus Ex Machina, which seemed
Sure.
It was fine though because
it was earned. You know,
We knew he was
fine.
getting his powers back, right, or not?
I felt
will
like he had to. I couldn't remember exactly how it was going to work, and you know.
I will say, to be fair, my disbelief was suspended until he got them back. So
Yeah.
I did not think in my mind, well, he's got to get him back. I was too engrossed in the episode. So
I thought the whole time he's got to get him back. Even if I did not know there were more Q episodes in the series, I'm sure I would have thought, he's getting him back.
I knew he did. I mean, if I thought about it, I would have, but I just didn't take any time to think that.
I remember this episode very well, and the next one for that matter. I've definitely seen them both a number of times.
Yeah.
I'm with both of you essentially on that. I'm kind of split there as far as I was taken out of it enough that I didn't really concentrate on the idea that he was going to get them back in the same episode. And at the same time, I kind of remembered that he must have at some point, but I was ready to buy the idea that he wasn't going to get them back until somewhere down the road.
This episode was directed by Les Landau, who's directed a bunch of episodes and will direct a bunch more, so we've talked about him in the past. It was written by Richard Danis, who was a story editor for a while on Next Gen. The only other Next Gen episode he has a writing credit for is Booby Trap. He has Teleplay by, that Ferengi episode. This was his only written by story credit, and it was his last credit for Next Gen, although he has a story play by and teleplay by for DS9. So we'll see him again. Looking over the episodes he wrote or did teleplay by, they all seem pretty different. So at least he doesn't have like a formula that I could pick out from his Star Trek credits.
The formula is there is no formula.
What other notes you got?
I've gone through all mine.
Me too.
That was it.
So let's get to the rankings. Wesley, scale of 1 to 10, how annoying?
I gave
Was
him
he
a
in
1.
this?
No, he wasn't in this.
Yeah. So a 1.
So no ranking. Who was your annoyance of the week?
I was torn between Q and the Calamarians, but I think I talked myself into the Calamarians. I just think if they would have been willing to talk, we could have solved some stuff easier in this episode.
That reminded me of the thing that was going.
Jerks. I think maybe they were the jerks.
That reminded me of the thing I was going to say before about the calamarians when you brought that up.
That they're delicious with a little bit of garlic butter?
That's the other thing I kept thinking.
Sigh. The behind the scenes reason for that might have been budget, as far as just not wanting to have to give them some sort of concrete shape and have them talk. You know, we already have these other aliens on the planet that we're seeing.
Aliens on the planet, I think, were unnecessary, and that's going to be my annoyance of the week.
That's another good point. Really, it's just
they didn't add anything to the episode.
I mean, they added some verisimilitude to the idea of what was going on. It's,
not enough.
I know. There's not really enough you can do, but at least they made the effort to give you something else other than just. I think they made it at least a good, reasonable pretense at having a backstory going on. So, setting up the conflict. God, I don't know. I'm kind of gonna have to combine Q and the Calamarians in the sense of just the moments when they were interacting, when he was like, "Oh, I'm shaking off these termites or something." So that is it.
So I'm writing Q Amari for you.
Nice.
Crushes of Star Trek.
Just to shake it up, I'm going with the brunette fantasy woman who is uncredited. I couldn't find the actress.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't have. She was just hot. I have. It's a base reason. That's all I got. But I appreciated her.
Similarly, I'm going to shake things up for similar reasons. The patient in sick bay. And I'm not going to remember this by next week or whatever, but that's...
I noticed my op station brunette that had been my crush for 4 weeks until last week I broke the streak and picked somebody else who was back at ops. So she must have been a regular extra this season. It was definitely the same brunette. But I am going to stick with Alexandra from last week because I already chose that brunette for several weeks, and I'm giving somebody else a turn.
Maybe she's the person who said, "I don't know."
I don't
And 10
think she
forward.
had any lines. But give somebody else a turn like it's some privilege that I have a crush on them. Not at all. Apologies to whoever. Let's rank the episode. I'm inclined to start near the top.
Yeah.
As am I. Good.
too.
Yep. Again,
Let's start-
I'm not disappointed by Steven.
Let's start with the other episode written by the same guy or teleplay by the same guy, Booby Trap.
I think I like this one more.
Really?
Yeah.
I'd go either way, honestly. I liked Booby Trap.
It might be recency bias.
Yes.
I feel like there's some of that for me, certainly. If I think back to how much more was going on with the Booby Trap.
I mean, I could easily go with this above it. I'm just saying I liked that episode. I'm kind of torn.
As am I. I feel like I like the science more in the Booby Trap. In this.
The one above that is the Enterprise host negotiations for a stable wormhole. And you know, the Ferengi went through the wormhole and all that.
I don't think this one is better than that. That's my first
I
impulse.
think they're comparable. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're definitely in
sure.
the range.
Yeah. I could probably go either way.
What was below Booby Trap?
The Enemy, Romulan episode.
That's the Romulan. Yeah.
Ooh. That's tough. I mean, that was a
I
good
know,
Romulan
anything in
episode.
there.
And man,
So just for the purposes of what I feel like the sort of consensus is, would be put it above Booby Trap but below the price.
yeah, I mean,
I think so, because I know I heavily praise that with the way I almost blasphemed myself by saying it might have been better than Journey to Babel.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
I thought about it for a second. And was like, no, let's not get crazy. But it was a good episode.
That puts it fourth for the season, if we put it just
Okay.
below the price, which fourth out of 13. I think that means we've had some really good episodes this season.
Yeah.
I'm happy with that.
okay, I have to ask, what's above the price right now?
I just closed the thing.
Sorry.
Because we're going to do another episode.
We'll get back there.
Who watches The Watchers?
Yeah, I mean, it's getting tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good to have a hard time figuring out what to put at the top rather than what to put at the bottom.
Yes. I'm willing to say, even though we're only halfway through this season, it is much, much, much better than original series season 3.
Yes.
Keith, you're not serious.
No, I am not. I mean, I'm biased toward Next Generation anyway
Yeah.
when it comes to these kinds of
I
discussions. But
still, so far, don't think this is as good as the first 2 seasons of the original series overall.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet.
Not yet.
I would seriously need to rewatch the TOS to. I don't feel it yet. I mean,
But there are at
they're too
least
distant to my mind.
3 really memorable next gen episodes still to come this season that are big. So I don't think we've hit the heights of this season yet. I think we're our best episodes are still ahead of us. So next week we're gonna watch Matter of Perspective, a Matter of Perspective, in which the widow of a respected scientist, Dr. Apgar, accuses Riker of seducing her and killing her husband. Rather than turn Riker over for unfavorable trial, the Enterprise reconstructs the facts. And I remember this one really well. Like, I feel like I've seen it recently. Like, I'm not just joking because we watched both these together. I meant really recently before that, but I don't remember when. It was very fresh in my mind. Anyway.
You watch it at the right time or the wrong time, depending upon your perspective. Yes.
After I was pelted by rays no one fully understands. Until next time, live long.
Keep an eye on the moon and prosper.
Which moon?
That's your
John
moon.
Delancey's
That's the
moon.
space station.
Are you telling us to keep an eye on John Delancey's moon, Steven?
No. Well, sure.
He could have been
You're
your
so
crush this
inclined.
week. You missed an opportunity.
If you're so inclined, I say, yeah, have at it.
It's All Been Done presents.
Who's got the time?